Welcome, everybody. It is time to call our Finance Committee meeting to order. I'd like to welcome everybody in person and online and introduce our committee. Again, Georgia Marsden, Jim Balfans, Bill Vogt, Pam Boudreau, Diane Rose, Ed Lane, and we have Michael Canales, the town administrator, with us. And in the audience, we have Patrick White, the chair of the select board. So welcome, everybody. Unfortunately, Steve Schatz could not make it this evening. He's got a building committee for the Berkshire Hills Regional School District. So there's just so much one can do. I did want to make one quick comment relative to the meeting, that when one of our members wants to make a comment, we need to allow them a full span of time and ability to make their comment completely, and not have them cut off in the midst. That has happened in the eagerness to bring matters to the public. So just a reminder, when it's not a complaint, it's just to keep everything in order. We have circulated to our committee the draft of our last Finance Committee meeting from October 26th. Are there any comments, corrections, or proposed changes to that document?
I move the approval.
Second.
I second it.
Okay, so we have minutes. We have a first, Balfans, and a second, Bill.
Yep.
And there being none, all in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay, 7-0. Thank you. I'm just making some notes for myself. One of the issues that has come up from time to time is the role and organization of the Finance Committee. And really, since the inception, and this is just a reminder and a FYI, since the inception of the town's bylaws, the moderator, the elected town moderator, has appointed Finance Committee members to the tune of 7 active members and 2 alternates. And this has been a role that has been in existence since the town was formed. And the role of the Finance Committee, and this is very important, this is an independent body. It's an overseer. It's an advisory group, and every article in the warrants for any annual or special town meetings calling for appropriation or borrowing money, creation of debt or disposal of property of the town shall be referred to this committee by the selectmen, and all committees and the committee shall either approve or disapprove those requests. And the committee shall inform itself as to the financial condition of the town and prepare a statement of fixed charges against which taxes shall be levied. And also an interesting thing is from the bylaws, the committee is mandated to have one meeting annually so that any interested taxpayer can attend. And we do that in the form of a baby town meeting, which is generally a week or 2 before the annual town meeting. So that's basically the role. Anybody have any questions on that? There being none, I have to compliment Gary Johnston, the moderator, for really appointing an outstanding, exceptional group of people to really do the bidding of the town's finances. And this group, this is a very collegial group. I'm sorry Steve couldn't be with us this evening, but it operates in the best interest of all town taxpayers. And that's the key. There is no conflict of interest here. In fact, every member of this committee annually takes a conflict of interest course, which this year is due to be completed by the 24th of February. So that ethics course, which deals principally with conflict of interest, is taken by every member of this committee. Now, one thing I would like the committee to do in the next week or so is send me a one paragraph bio and background of each individual on the committee, so that I can bring it up at a subsequent meeting when there are representatives of the town there. And if you wish, and this is up to the will of the committee, I have a little blurb on every one of the people that are here this evening. Would you like me to spend a couple of minutes to run through each of them? Or do you think that that's, we're not going to, there's nothing to discuss. I'm not going to mention any names. Some of the members are obvious. What do you think about that, everybody?
I think it's great because they get a chance to listen.
Okay.
Whoever is on that other end there.
Okay, so you don't think it's necessary then?
Oh, I think it's
Okay,
fine.
all right.
I would.
All right, we have 7 members here present this evening. We have, to my right, a local banker who has been assigned to several local Berkshire County branches and has been in the business for a considerable period of time. We also have on this committee an educator, athletic program director, and specialty products manufacturer, retired. And this individual has been past president of a number of Western Mass and Stockbridge organizations and clubs. Further, we have a manager, financial advisor, actuary, and principal for several nationally recognized human resource consulting firms. And in addition to that role that individual has served, he's been a board member of a condominium and vice chair for SUNY Business Advisory Council and a university adjunct professor. We also have, a retired town administrator of 31 years. And boy, let me say, if she doesn't know the business at this point, we got a problem. So welcome. We also have a practicing attorney on our board, on our finance committee. And he has, in addition, served as a selectman for multiple terms and has been president of a community, president of the board of a community organization. We have also an owner and manager of a hospitality business, a bed and breakfast for more than 30 years, who's been very active in the Stockbridge community. We have also a retired managing director of a nationally recognized financial institution after a 30-year career in corporate and municipal finance and private banking. And this individual is an Army veteran, as well as serving on a number of boards, YMCA, Hancock Shaker Village, as well as a number of town boards and committees. And lastly, we have a retired managing director of a Fortune 500 company that had responsibility for a major business segment and had a 22-year career with this international firm. This individual has also spent a number of years in the business segment that he oversaw while serving for this company, and has been chair of a university in Boston, Worcester, and Manchester, New Hampshire, as well as a trustee of a group of the South Carolina Hospital Association, and an adjunct professor of several communities, and an Army veteran. So that's the that's the committee that we have. This is a solid substantive group of people that work on behalf of the taxpayers. And I would appreciate an overview from each of you so that we can share it formally at some future period. Any comments relative to that? Okay. I should mention also that there has been some discussion about how the committee is selected, and to the select board's unanimous credit, they have supported unanimously the current article and bylaw of what I have gone through of the role and committee structure. So we thank them for their support, and also we thank Michael Canales and his department heads for their support, because they make the job a lot easier for what we do. And I should mention a couple of highlights for, accomplishments of the Finance Committee over the years. It has had overall supervision of the budget process, encouragement of prospective operating capital budgeting needs contrasted to a reactive approach, encouragement of full funding of the OPEB exposure. There are very, very few communities in Berkshire County that fully fund OPEB.
What's OPEB?
I'm sorry?
What's OPEB?
OPEB is other post-employment benefits, where if somebody retires early, they're non-pension benefits, healthcare, disability, so forth. And otherwise, this would come out of the operating budget. So we are fully funded based on actuarial determination. We have more than 90% actuarial confidence level, so that's pretty good. And also the encouragement of infrastructure maintenance, this committee has overseen, and support of a reserve fund that took us through the advent of COVID. We had surplus monies available, which we will draw down on, but we had to have that in case some of our businesses were unable to support their taxes. And of the communities in Berkshire County, Stockbridge has one of the lowest, within eighth from the lowest of the tax rates in the county, which is a compliment. Michael, what is it? $8 and change, I think. $8.38, is that?
I thought it was 36, but yeah, $8 and
36.
I believe it's 36.
$8.36. So that's what the committee does. The select board has been supportive of it. The town has been supportive of the taxpayers, as well as the town administration. So any comments, questions relative to that?
Well, Jay, I would just add one thing. I didn't know exactly what you were going to do regarding this, but I made the note here. Any member, we only have two people on this committee that I'll use the definition public finance and private finance. We really only have two people who have been intimately involved with public finance. That's Georgia, through her experience as town administrator, and Steve Schatz through his experiences as a select board and on other committees for the town. The rest of us come to this committee from what I'll call a private finance background. We all have a varied degree of it, but every one of us has the ability to manage budgets. What we don't have when we first come onto the committee is the complete understanding, this is my opinion only, between private finance and public finance. I can't tell you how many times I'd watch a meeting or I'd listen to people, I'd have a discussion with people. It's real simple. Just go into town and cut that budget by 5%. Right across the board, just cut that budget. Well, it sounded pretty good to me when I first thought about becoming a member. until you get here and you realize you can't just across the board do this. I'm saying this not to educate this committee, but to speak to those people that are trying to mandate a change. And I think it's really important for the public to know that it takes, my observation, I've been on this committee since, I believe it was 2015 when I came on the committee. And I know for the first 2 years, I basically sat and listened and learned. And I've observed new people on the committee overall that come from the private background doing the same thing, basically. So it takes time to understand the difference between public, what I'll call public and private finance. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Agreed.
Totally.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Any other comments relative to this? Okay. We have had circulated to several members of the committee initially some proposed formats for affordable housing trust projects, the accessory dwelling units, and also inclusionary development projects. Now, basically, as only a few of the committee members were circulated this material, I took the liberty to circulate it to the entire committee, okay? And this material, as I understand it, is currently in the discussion and planning stage by the Affordable Housing Trust Committee. And basically, it's also material that has to, yeah, go ahead.
It has nothing with the Affordable Housing Trust. This came from the select board.
From the select board, okay, excuse me, sorry. And ultimately, the Affordable Housing Trust Committee will be involved in it.
No.
Okay. Basically, the point that I'm making, I stand corrected, is that this material will also go before the planning board, okay? Which is an appropriate forum for this relative to the details and timetables and extent of these two documents. And I think as far as our committee goes, I don't think we would have anything to add or detract at this point. It's too premature. And we have the overview to these two concepts. It'll go before the planning board. Let's see what they have to say. I mean, there are a lot of issues involved. Planning, zoning, what about the water and sewer inspection, infrastructure, maintenance and so forth. And also, is there any role for the Community Preservation Committee in this? So I would leave that topic at that point right now, unless somebody on the committee has some comments to add, which is not prepared enough to discuss it. Okay? All right? Yeah.
I just would encourage you, as a panel, to weigh in on the ADU and the inclusionary residential bylaw, because, as you know, the actual hearing will be conducted by the planning board, and these are important changes to the town bylaws, and I think that the more of us that are involved in discussing them and weighing in, that's a good thing. And so between now and when the planning board hears it, if you've got thoughts on it, now's the time to weigh in. Thank you.
Okay, any other comments at this point? Okay. I would add that that one of the issues that is in process is there are some deficiencies that have been noted with Pine Woods and Heaton Court that require some remedial action. And I understand that a plan is being reviewed by appropriate bodies, ultimately to be presented to the Community Preservation Committee because there are funds there. And ultimately, it'll come before this committee. So we feel that this is a very important area. If there are corrective action noted, obviously, we want to take care of the people who are supported by affordable housing that are in existing facilities, really before or in conjunction with expanding what we do in that area. Any comments relative to that? And basically, you know, at this point, we're expecting to have a budget and timetable for those two facilities and details of what is required. Okay. You know, we have talked in the past about the walkway. There are monies available for the walkway, but we await the details on those two facilities. Any other comments on that? It's important. Is that all right? Okay. Now, we have several, I want to bring up a few key budget considerations that we're going to be discussing basically as we move into the cycle. Michael expects all budgets, operating capital to be back by the 15th, correct, of February. And then we will start to meet with each of those areas to talk about them in detail. Several that are on the planning block right now, on the block, is replacement of Averick Bridge 2. And basically, we have received a $100,000 study grant, and I understand that there is funding available for this project. Is that a correct statement?
Yes, so we received the planning grant last year. We're on to get the Chapter 85 review completed. If everything works out, we would apply for the next fund, which is a construction grant. And then if you remember, part of the borrowing that we took was to cover the remaining cost of that bridge. If everything goes according to plan, it would actually be the summer of 2024 that we would do the installation of the bridge if everything falls.
2024 in
Calendar year, not this summer.
Okay.
Following summer. Unless there's delays in the Chapter 85 review or grant funding or the rest, it could be the summer of 25, but either summer of 24 or 25 would be that second bridge would be completed.
Any questions? It's important. I mean, there are people that live in that area that have to go all the way around up by the Stockbridge Sportsman's Club. So it's important to get that thing resolved. The next one is replacement of the salt shed in the at the town. It's deteriorating. It's wood and it's just rotting away. And as I understand it, we have funding for that.
Last year, we appropriated funding through the borrowing for that. We've begun the engineering work on it, and we're currently working through some designs to take to the next step.
What's the timetable for that? Do we have one?
Right now, it's anticipated that will also be the construction summer season of 2024.
Okay, any questions on that? The next one, we have talked about the Main Street crosswalk project. There is a $137,000 partial grant that was received. And basically, I guess this has to be approved at some point, right?
No, it's already been approved.
It's approved.
So we have the grant for $137,000 we're going to take from the Winter Road Assistance Program money that we also received. So that's fully funded, and we are going out to bid on February 8th with bids due back on March 1st with construction to begin in May. These are for the there's going to be two raised crosswalks that are being put in, spacing out the crosswalks and the rest. So it's not the intersection, it's just the crosswalk.
Just the elevated crosswalk. Is that, any questions?
Does that include the new one, not the middle one that's going to be taken out, but the new design to move it further?
Yeah.
Any questions at all? Anything else? No? The next one is the repair and replacement of Tuckerman's Bridge. We commenced a study in
We
January?
have the construction funding and the study, appropriated at the last town meeting. We've already done the bore samplings and we're on to the Chapter 85 design at this point. We did get slightly delayed because we had to do some remodeling of the bridge based on the 25-year flood. You have to be 2 feet above the 25-foot limit, and because of where the bridge is located, changes in climate and the rest, we're having to relook a little bit at the design. But the design is well under the way, under process. So we're in the Chapter 85. Once again, that's most likely 2024 or 2025 actual construction before we get full. This is a larger bridge. It's going through the full Chapter 85 design review by Mass Highway. So
That will be totally closed down, is that correct?
when it closes down, it'll be closed down. Yes. And what we're trying to do in this one is get ahead of, instead of having the state come in and close it and come up with a plan, and then a few years later, reopening the bridge. This will be a controlled close, replace the bridge, get it back up. If we can time everything, it'd be one construction season. So it'd be one May through November construction to get the bridge taken down and a new one put up. It is just replacing the superstructure. It's not the foundations. So the foundations would be reused that are in the river. But what they're going to have to do is they're going to actually, and we had mentioned this last year, is the possibility that they're going to have to pour cement underneath to raise the current foundations. So you won't actually see it. It'll be hidden within the steel structure, but technically they're building on top of those to get us the clearance for the new 25-year floodplain that we have.
I wonder if that'll interfere with the activities of the Stockbridge Golf Club.
No.
No? Go ahead, Jim.
The only comment I would make regarding that, the bridge, is that it's going to be wonderful to have that bridge sitting above the high water mark, the 100-year flood and everything. But we all need to understand that water's still going to flow right across the rest of that road. Once you go down past Nina Ryan's place there, until you get to the bridge, there are many times when that whole road is just flooded. And there's nothing we can do about that. So, but it'll be nice to have, as I understand, the reason was not only to raise the bridge, but to be able to support heavier traffic across the.
Well, there was a critical structural failure about 4 years ago in the bridge itself, and they've lowered the ratings. And what was happening is if we didn't get on top of this, at some point the state would have ordered the bridge closed, and then we would have been dealing with multiple years of having the bridge closed when we designed it. So instead, as I brought up last year, this was getting the design, getting everything in place so that instead of, when we go to close it, we close it and actually replace it instead of.
Michael, I also thought I had heard in a previous meeting that the plan on closing that bridge while it was being constructed was to have one lane open. Did that get changed because the whole structure has to be raised?
No, we were going to close the bridge fully. There was talk about whether or not we would have to put in, whether it was, whether you would shift over the road and put in what's called the Bailey Bridge, those temporary bridges. That would have added substantially hundreds of thousands to the project. We did explore the idea of whether we could do one side, but we're going to be replacing the whole steel upper structure and keeping the historic foundations that are quite old, but they're in good shape. We will have to put in some upstream scouring and some other stuff, but we hope to have the full design specs done shortly. Like I said, they had to go back and relook at the elevation of the bridge due to the 25-year flood design that we're required to use.
It's 25 years, not 100?
No, you have to, there's plans around the 100 too, and then the 25, and but the 25 was the one that was tripping us up. So we had to relook at that and reapply. So, yeah, it's well underway.
Okay, any other comments on that one? Okay, the next one, dredging of Stockbridge Bowl. That's a project that we need to get an assessment on, right? What the extent of that is going
So
to,
we have a monthly meeting now with GZA happening with a small group of us that is pushing this project forward. So anticipation is that, we're looking at least 18 months of permitting and the rest for it. And we're gonna begin putting together the solid numbers and the rest for the entire project. So it's one of those ones that's one of our few future projects that we don't have locked down yet. But it is something that we're working on and we're ready to bring some stuff forward we can consider it.
any comments on that?
Okay. I actually have a question for the finance committee on that one. The CPC deadline is next week, obviously, and we could make in the past CPC funded a couple $100,000 towards dredging. The town could submit an application for some funding on dredging. Wanted to get your take on it. We've got a select board meeting the day before the deadline, and I could easily pitch it to my colleagues if you thought there was some merit to that. The other question that some of us have been talking about is using some of the approximate 2.6 million in free cash that we have currently, dedicating some to dredging, similar to how we did in the past with COVID and then we did last year with the retiring the school debt, the school building debt. So we don't necessarily need to figure out the ladder tonight, but in terms of CPC, it might be good to spend a minute talking about whether we want to put an application in for dredging.
Well, the applications are due, when?
Wait to
The 17th, right?
the 10th.
The 10th. So,
I would have to write it, or one of us would have to write it, but yes. I meant just asking, thoughts on it. I mean, it looks like we're about 2.5 million short between what the SBA has raised and what the cost of dredge is going to be. That's a pretty big, pot of cash for a bond. And so, using some free cash, possibly CPC, maybe makes some sense.
Well, my feeling is, my opinion is that we should have some numbers presented to us. As I understand the process on this committee is to have the numbers before us which will enable us to make an advisory recommendation,
well,
yes or
see,
no.
the
We don't
proposal
make
would
that
go.
tonight.
Absolutely. The CPC, the proposal would go to CPC. CPC would then make a determination, is there funding, is there not funding? And based on the lack of funding, they would either come to the town or other sources subsequent to that. There would be a definitive plan. So, Patrick's comment is that a plan would have to go before CPC before we even see anything like that.
But wouldn't that be the selectmen's choice, not ours as a finance committee?
Correct.
Because we're just recommending.
Correct.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
it would be, I would think, up to the,
Just asking advice. I mean, seriously, right?
I mean-
It's like, we have ongoing expenses of the GZA work we're having to pay for. Michael could elaborate as to what that costs, but, we've been dipping into the prior CPC grant to the SBA to pay for the current GZA work.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Please understand by my comment, I'm not opposed to anything. I agree that dredging has to occur.
Yeah.
I just think that we're putting the cart before the horse in terms of the finance committee
Okay.
making an opinion. That's all. That's my.
No, I think
based
Patrick
upon-
understands that.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean,
What about the CPC deadline, Jim, then?
Yeah.
No, I
I would
understand, but
suggest
why
that the
did it come
selectmen
to
do
that?
that.
Why did it take that long? It should have
It
been,
hasn't here yet. I mean.
should have been done before.
I mean, why wouldn't you do that every year? You know what I'm saying?
I'm leaning toward supporting that. I'm not, like you said,
Right.
yeah.
I mean, I just guess I would, well, that's not
Yeah.
me to say as a finance board member this time.
Okay, anything else? Okay,
Sorry.
no? Next one, Phase 3 review of the stormwater and sewer systems.
Yeah, so that was another one that we appropriated at last year's town meeting, so phase 3 is the design work, and that is being completed by DPI. We're moving ahead on that, and then next will come the actual cost of funding the actual repairs identified which will be stage 4. So they're doing the cammering of all the lines. The preliminary work has all been done, except in a few areas that they'll have to go back in the spring. And then we will have that finalized report. And then from there, prioritize the repairs that need to be made and then move on to the actual costs.
So phase 3 basically is still a plan, planning for the ultimate resolution of,
Yeah, so you have stage 1, 2, and 3, which are all your planning stages
Yeah.
in sewer. And then stage 4 is the actual reconstruction. So we're on to, we'll be on to stage 4 next. That's where the larger dollar amounts will come into play.
thank you. The other issue, we have not had anything relative to, nothing's come back relative to the Berkshire Hills Regional School District. That's still in the planning stages with respect to the high school, and the consolidation of the 2 districts, right? So that's still in process.
Meetings are ongoing. as far
Ongoing.
as the-
Correct.
Both building the new school on our own, the regional combination.
Correct.
There's a lot of work going in right now.
Right.
Yes.
We have a matter that we need to look at. It is, we regrettably have an aging population in the town of Stockbridge. I don't think that's a secret. But what it has done is put somewhat of a strain on fire department volunteers, okay? It's difficult to get volunteers. And there is an age limit relative to serving as a volunteer in the fire department. I think we're looking at some options for this, perhaps hiring a full-time individual. Is that a possibility?
There's a bunch of possibilities, and we're going to be putting that together as part of the presentation for after the 15th. But we have to look at our staffing levels. How can we appropriately respond? And then what are the long-term options? I say long-term, but they're actually not that long. Probably within the next 5 to 10 years, we're going to age out. So a number of our firefighters, and because of the lack of a new interest in that it's going to be a challenge, and we need to think about how we're going to approach it. So working on a couple things, and I'll be back to the board as far as the immediate plans, and then mid-range and then long-range plans, working with the fire chief and been in communication with other towns around us, other fire chiefs and others about where not only us, because we're not the only ones. There's a lot of other communities in South County that are suffering the same.
Great Barrington has issues with that.
Great Barrington has issues,
Yeah.
not as many. They've had to move toward paid call and full-time and the rest, but you've got other smaller towns that are dealing with aging, shrinking fire departments, and what type of approaches, from regional approaches to others, can be considered. But they're going to take time to put together, and we need to think about how to get there. So we'll be exploring that. The next couple of years is going to be a priority for us to get on top of.
It's also a matter of concern because typically the fire departments provides EMS support, and with an aging population, that's an issue.
We have 24/7, 365 EMS support coverage for the town. So we pay for that through Lennox and Lee. And but the fire department does roll, sometimes it's the first.
Correct.
In that, but we do have that covered. The other piece that is just the aging of the department. So,
But a plan is in process is basically.
we're trying to figure out how to move forward.
Anything on that? The other issue that I don't know if it's appropriate to bring it up, probably we await any plan on the Curtisville Bridge, anything, any developments there.
So right now, the Curtisville Bridge, I did meet with our engineers. We went out and met with Mass Historical. So Matt, the bridge is on, we took the money for a planning grant. The planning grant puts a 10-year restriction. Mass Historical has the right to, they have to approve any and all work. But because we didn't take construction funds, if you take construction funds, they forever have the right. So we only took the planning grant, so that expires in 2025. We're looking at what options are available. And I need to discuss this more with the select board on how we're gonna approach which one of the myriad of ideas to move forward. And they could be anything from a removal of the bridge to a rebuild of the bridge to a rebuild to a partial historical or attempt to rebuild as it was, the gamut. And those can run anywhere from, you're talking probably $500,000 all the way up to $8+ million. So right now is the first phase we need to do, because 2025 will come up fast, is that we need to be thinking now, what option are we pursuing and are we prepared to act? The bridge currently, the footings that are on the far side facing the white home, the footings are, the water's actually going under the footings of the bridge. And what it's doing is popping some of the stones on the retaining wall at the bottom, not at the top. You go up and take a look at it. And I do want to reiterate, if it gets out to people, because I know somebody took down a section of fencing and there was people on the bridge that we're addressing. That bridge is fenced for a reason. We're going to put up additional signage and maybe even a higher fence if needed, because it is not a structure people should be
It's a liability problem.
Yes.
Big time, okay? Somebody gets killed there, we've got an issue. Serious.
Yeah, and we bolted the fencing last time right to the bridge. And
Right.
we need to make sure. The railing systems are not safe to lean on, the rest of it. There's a lot of work out there, but we're working on it. We're also working to Mass Historic to see if they'd be willing to lift the 10-year one, because what's happening around the bridge is going to lead to eventual failure. And we need to, like I said, best case, we need to be thinking of the plan for 2025 to be ready to enact it once we have the authority to do it. And like I said, that'll come up fast. So we need to do that engineering now next year. So I'll be bringing it before the select board and trying to think of how do we engage the citizens of Stockbridge into what they want to see at that bridge and what to do.
Okay? Any other comments on that?
Well, the only comment it's good to hear Michael say that he's working on a plan there, because this has been well known to all of the finance committee members who have been on this committee for 5 or 6 years. It's certainly well known to the town in general that Curtisville Bridge needs to be replaced. And I hope you can get that personally. I hope you can get the historical committee to agree that the bridge itself is more important than maybe restoring something that is going to cost $8 to $10 million to build or to reconstruct. I just hope that some common sense can take place there. Let's get that bridge. Let's get a bridge built that's safe, that doesn't harm the existing wing walls that are coming down are going to damage that building there. And in my estimation, that could be a liability for the town. That's private property that we're allowing to degrade. So
Are you
really
talking about that hotel or whatever it is?
The brick
Is
building
that
on the other side.
Yeah.
Brick built, right.
Yeah, they put drainage in there at one point, if I'm not mistaken.
The foundation of that is tied into the wing walls.
right.
Yeah.
So it is a concern. And just so people are aware, it's not our local historic commissions. This is the state's historical commission that has the final say right now.
Well, I would hope that our historical commission would do all they can to convince the state historical commission that either they allow us to put a bridge up that will work and service the town, or let the historical commission pay that $8 to $10 million. I'm speaking as an individual, but in this case, I'm also speaking as a member of the finance committee that I don't think our town should be responsible for funding that whole thing if they're not going to let us replace that bridge with a safe structure.
Is it underpinning both houses there or just the brick one?
Well, it's not underpinning the bridge, the
mean, the-
one, that would be if we ever had a complete failure because the wing walls are held
Right.
up on the bridge, the wing walls are all tied in. It's actually, you can actually see it if you look from the brick building on the downstream side at the bottom, you can see the wing wall, that the stones at the bottom have popped.
Oh, at the brick one, okay.
And that's a sign that the water's behind the wing walls back there.
Okay. Anything else? Are there any other projects we should bring up at this point? I think it's a little premature now. We have to wait to see what comes back.
I'm just waiting to hear, I'm anticipating
Department heads.
most of what's should be coming up this year are the smaller projects. We tackled a lot of the larger projects, except for the ones you've identified, which, like I said, Curtisville dredging.
The other thing I've heard about, there are state infrastructure grant monies available.
Yep.
Are there any areas that need to be, that we need state infrastructure money, i.e. 183 up near the DeSisto School, with the construction of that, there's a house construction up there. The road is really deteriorating.
Right. So right now I'm going after two things. I'm going after, I am going after, through the MassWorks infrastructure program, to go after money for the Tuckerman. And if we could do that, then we can free up that money to also be used on some other projects. Won't fully fund it, but if we can get a chunk of the money covered by the state, attempting to do that. I'm also working with Hugh Page on a comprehensive plan, which we will bring, but like I said, we still have a little bit of time here, so we're still developing it, about doing road work. As far as paving, the paving is done through Chapter 90, which we have a nice amount of money set aside in Chapter 90. And if we could possibly look at supplementing that with some free cash and doing a lot of road overlays, reconstruction.
Something we should be looking at.
Which we are.
Yeah.
And I will be bringing that forward after we meet, like I said, working with the highway on developing that as a plan. And that would be something we would bring forward this year.
Yeah, there are a number, Hugh knows all
Yep.
those, so. Anything else? That's where we are right now on our projects that are out there. And then all of the detailed projects will start to come forward within the next couple of weeks. Any other comments? Is there any other business to come before this committee?
What about Pinewood situation? Did you want to mention that?
Oh, before I do that, if I was going to mention anything, I would just suggest that we need to keep an eye on the new school costs, because it was based on 2020 construction numbers and a 3.5% interest rate. And I don't believe either of those are, relevant anymore. And on Pinewoods, I think there's I circulated the report to you, and there's a number of deferred maintenance or deferred investment, deferred capital investment issues. I think it will take us easily a good part of the next year to work with Construct to kind of come up with a plan on that. But we have to come up with a plan on that, because it's obviously a little wetter there than it is in many other home sites in town, and without regular investment those buildings will deteriorate and continue to deteriorate. So I think that Michael and Ned and Vin and the folks at Construct and the folks on the Affordable Housing Trust Fund and I believe the Select Board of Finance Committee are all going to need to kind of put our heads together and come up with a plan, because we don't want 5 or 10 years down the road to be looking at to stay at our 10% level. New units are going at $600,000 a pop plus the land. And so we want to completely avoid this $20 million, start from scratch, to maintain those 30 units. What we're going to want to do is to figure out the investment we need at a much lower level, hopefully with state and federal partners to give that viability another 30 years instead of 5 or 10. So, but it's still premature. We're still asking questions and trying to get to figure it out, and there's a lot of moving parts on it.
Let me ask a question and tell me, Patrick, if I'm out of line here. How do we manage and assess Construct?
Construct is private property, private entity. I think the best thing we can do is to be a good partner. We've got to let them know that
Do we meet with them on a routine basis, like a monthly basis, to determine what projects are in process and the status of these
the
projects?
last few months we've met with them a whole lot more than I think they have been met with in recent memory. Many of you have seen the report. It is eye-opening, let's face it. And I think look, it's the funding landscape. Pinelands was funded with tax credits, meaning that they've got a certain lifespan and then they expire, and then they either need to be renewed or you figure out some other funding source. The tax credits for new buildings are a lot easier to get than tax credits for rehabilitation buildings. So they're highly competitive. What we're being told by much larger affordable housing players is that the town can offer to participate in the refinance, that those competitive tax credits at the state level, you can get a much better chance of securing a grant in a competitive environment. So, and one of the things that Jim and I met on, was that yesterday or Tuesday, was really kind of looking at, for example, before we put hundreds of thousands of dollars or $1 million in new Pinewoods path, could that be part of a larger project where instead we put the $1 million into a proposal to the state to get $5 or $6 million to leverage the money into a much larger project to renovate Pinewoods, rather than pay the whole boat, the whole freight on a project like the path. So we're going to look at all these things in context, and we've got a whole bunch of really good advisors who are really kind of trying to help us figure this out, and I think a board that is very motivated to make sure, in terms of Rennie and the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, to we don't recognize that between Eden Court and Pinewoods, that is, obviously, and Riverbrook, that is our affordable housing town. And we got to make sure that we fix that before, we kind of look at, the shiny new thing. Yeah.
Jim?
Well, Patrick, I appreciate you raising that point. I did watch the Affordable Housing Committee meeting on CTSB the other day. And frankly, I was shocked to hear some of the comments I heard from residents of Pinewoods. And then our meeting where you sent us, subsequent to that meeting, this report. And to be frank with you, I'll speak as a person now. It is really shocking to see this report from a paid consultant that was done and submitted to them on October 1st, 2021. And with the permission of the chair, Patrick, I'm going to forward the email that has this to the full committee, so they can be prepared to discuss this when the time comes, because in my personal opinion, this should be raised to a very high level, because we have people living there and they're living in some pretty deplorable situations. And some situations, if you read this report, that could result in some serious injuries or death. And I think we need to get that taken care of ASAP. And I'm not criticizing how, I support the housing authority trying to get that done and everything, but I think this needs to be moved up in terms of priority by this town.
So when I got that report, I reviewed it with Steve Schatz to just get his opinion. He's been through this and he also has a lot of experience in real estate that I don't have. And he suggested, and it was advice I took, that obviously we prioritize the life safety considerations there. And that's the first thing we did. And Michael, Ned, and Vin are looking at that. It's unclear at this point, or Michael maybe knows, that whether or not from a regulatory point of view, there's any infractions from that the town could address. But nevertheless, the reality on the ground is that we got to address those.
Right.
But it's much larger than that. You've got issues with the steel, you got issues with the siding, issues with the roof, issues with the boilers. It could easily be, and this was a third-party estimate, $3 to $5 million worth of work. So, that was really, I know that you referenced earlier opaquely the request.
The importance of it, right.
One of the reasons why we rethought that request is we're not going to invest $1 million in new boilers, new siding, and new roof before we know what the full plan has to be to get to a point where we can get another 30 years or 40 years out of those structures. So, and there's a lot of folks with a lot of experience thinking about these issues. And I want to emphasize that we need to be the partners with Construct and really just help them as the private property owners here, get the financing they need to make the conditions better and improve them and ensure that we've got, that's all we got. And that's got to be our primary focus on making sure that that's there for the long term.
Patrick, the other thing that should be emphasized, that in the assessment of the report with Construct, in addition to a long-term overall project, there are immediate remedial steps that may have to occur.
Right.
We don't know, but obviously there are things that have to be done within different time frames. So that's got to be structured to the overall.
And the CPC request that the Affordable Housing Trust Fund is going to put in is going to specifically include $150,000 as an emergency sort of triage fund where we would partially fund potentially, for example, if a boiler would actually blow out and they simply, I don't know what their financials look like, but on the one hand, I don't want us to be on the hook for dollar, every dollar needs to be spent. But on the other hand, if there really is an emergency, because the Affordable Housing Trust can act not just once a year like CPC, but can act on an ongoing basis, 5 members vote for it. We want to kind of make sure that, to the degree that we can be supportive, we're supportive. But the other part of that 150 is the next phase to get to the point where we can make a request for financing from the state. There's several more consulting projects that need to happen. To my understanding is the next one may be something like $20,000, and we're going to propose that we fund that. Because, I don't know why that first report you're looking at has been funded, but now there's more engineering work that needs to go forward. And we got to make sure that we're on track to not delay maintenance and investment in this any longer. And we got to let them know that they want our help, that getting to the point where we have a strong proposal in front of the state is a really high priority.
So we can expect activity from the Affordable Housing Trust to CPC.
Yeah,
things are in the
voted
pipeline.
that in the last meeting.
That's important.
Thank you for the opportunity to be here. I'm the chair of the trust.
Rennie Warner.
And my name is Randy Warner. And I want to assure you, I'd like to make a couple of distinctions. One, this is private property, I think, as someone else said. It's owned by Construct. However, it was our Community Preservation Committee who funded the initial money. And it's not clear whether they were also, I don't see anybody, I think, that was on the CPC at the time of the funding. But there was some help from the town to get the land. that it was built on. So we've had as a town very strong involvement in that project. However, it was Construct who came to the town and proposed the development. It is Construct that owns now the land and the project. So as a town, it's a very important development because it's part of the 10% of those, I don't know if everybody knows, there's a 40B requirement that every community have 10% of its dwelling unit. They're one of very few towns in the county who actually meets that 10%. If you don't meet that 10%, you are vulnerable to a developer coming to town and saying, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z, and I'm not going to conform to your zoning or any of your bylaws. They're going to have the total right to do that. So it's a pretty heavy little hammer over town's head if they don't have it. We have it, so we're very well protected. However, in order for us now at this juncture, after, I believe it's not quite 20 years, it's 2006 that it was built or completed. And for until last Friday, I believe, the tax credit people own that property, 99% of it. As of last Friday, the paperwork was completed and the ownership now belongs 100% to Construct. And like a lot of affordable housing projects, Pinewood suffers from the same issue, that the rents do not provide enough money to do the maintenance. And that's why there is this tremendous amount of good maintenance. It's true countrywide that it's very, very common that projects come to this point, the tax credits run out, there's no reserve. The total reserve, long-term reserves for this project are $100,000 right now. There's an operating reserve of also $100,000. That hardly makes a dent in this project.
I think, Rennie, this is something that we need to get more details on, hear more about it with specifics. And, obviously it's an issue that we need to look at.
Well,
Okay.
I just want to stress to you that you haven't had, until you funded or created the trust, which has only been, our Stockbridge Trust has only been in operation since last October. And so we've had about 4 or 5 meetings, and in that time, our first priority has been to uncover and to identify and work with Construct to try to identify these issues. And that report that you have, Jim, is the first real significant information that we see. It leads us to a couple of important steps that Patrick has just outlined. One of them is, the one most important is the code compliance study and the structural engineering study. And that information is missing. If you read that, I assume maybe you have that. There's a big red line in the cost summary that says we don't know what the structural costs are going to be.
You know what you might think about is sending us an overview of what your strategic and implementational plans are, so that we can look at that. That would be very helpful.
Well, we'd be happy to be, collaborative with the finance committee, but I think you've got to give the trust the time to put together what's needed and to develop a collaboration with Construct, because we don't, at this point, the trust has no place to stand. We're opening our hands to say we're here to help because you're in our community and you're important, but we haven't, there's a ways to go before there's more information.
Okay, Jim.
Get to you.
I appreciate your background information, and I'm sure things will come out. I just have to say this. I think in the opinion of 99.44% of the population in Stockbridge, I think they strongly feel that Pinewoods has been either owned by the town of Stockbridge, or certainly, I'll use the word controlled in terms of the rents and the upkeep and so forth. And yes, we want to try to convince Construct and work with them. But I think the town as a whole is going to be pretty shocked if they read this report.
But you understand that's not true. We
It's
don't
not
own
true.
it and we don't.
No, I understand that, but I'm saying, I think 99% of the people in town think that.
Well, right.
And that's
the part
gonna-
We need to really correct.
Yeah, well, that's going to create a lot of angst when the town hears what it's going to cost to do that. Now, can we help Construct? Hopefully we can, but we're not going to be able to fund all of it.
No, clearly not. And there are ways, and we've already started that conversation, to develop a capital stack to get that done. But I use the word, which is lingo, of capital stack, because it means that we're going to help Construct find all of these different levels of financing. And it is, I call it the alphabet soup, but you got to get into the middle of this soup and find all the alphabet companies that provide the funding. And we are going to need a great deal of help.
Okay, I think at this point, we'll look forward to additional information, okay?
Hey, I have one viewer that has had their hand up.
What's the name of the viewer?
Oh, right here. Oh,
There. Yeah, thanks for taking my hand here. Yeah, so my name is Johanna. My name is Johanna Linsky. I spoke the other day at the Affordable Housing Trust Committee. I represent the Pine Woods Community Association. We're a tenant-run advocacy group for tenants. We've been advocating on behalf of about 2/3 of the tenants here at Pine Woods on different issues. And, I have to say that, as much as I could probably agree with, the chairman's comments on being frustrated with Construct and their sort of some of the issues getting this place up to speed. I will say that, we really we're going to need the help and the money to be able to do that. And in terms of tenants, the projects that we envision and that we're hoping to get some help with for the town, we're really going to need you guys to at least give this process a chance and to meet with the tax credits. I believe it's a $1 million threshold, so that the tax credits will be able to get that other 3 or 4 million, because the total amount of money that it's going to take, from what I understand, to get this place up to speed, including the projects that we, the tenants, really would love to see, which is a new playground, a new community garden, a bus stop, some tree work. That's all on our website. If you guys want to take a look at that at some point, it's pinewoodscommunityassociation.org. But in any case, I'm just here I want to just kind of prop up Patrick a little bit, because he's been very great working with me and PCA and the tenants here at Pine Woods. He's been, him and Randy have been going to bat for us quite a bit. And I can't tell you how relieved we are over here as tenants to see that. I mean, it's just unprecedented. The amount of work that they're putting in to establish affordable housing here in Stockbridge. And I think that they're really looking for your help here, as we are as a group, to get the financing that we need. And if Construct is going to be, I agree that Construct should have some checks and balances. Absolutely agree with that. Whether it's a monthly check-in or whatever you guys would satisfy you. But I think any more delay in kind of thinking about who's going to be doing that work is really just going to delay our ability to get the tax credits that we need to make that happen. And that kind of worries me, because we really need your support to go forward with that. So I have a lot of the same criticisms, but that being said, Patrick's done a really great job. So has Randy, in involving us, the tenants, and supporting us as the tenants. And I think that they're going to make sure that Construct is on the up and up. And I agree, some checks and balances would be helpful. But I'm hoping, I'm just here to say that they've been doing a great job been doing well by us as the,
Thank you. Patrick, what is this young lady's name?
Johanna Lensky, she lives at Pinewood.
Johanna
Joanna.
Lensky.
Lensky, okay.
Yeah.
An H.
Jim?
I don't want this to be misunderstood that any comments I've made or anyone else are not in favor of getting this taken care of.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I want that to be very clear to you. I hope you didn't misunderstand any of these comments. Personally, I think it should be right at the top of our list.
Thank you.
We have people living there. I don't need a response from you at this point, please. All I want to say is, I don't think there's anybody on this committee. I know I've been the only one that's spoken, but I don't think there's anybody on this committee that after reading this report is not going to agree that this needs attention as quickly as possible to get it resolved. It's going to take some steps. That's understandable. But if you've started the steps, great. We need to keep that at the top of the burner. That's my opinion. I think anyone who reads this report is going to agree with it.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
It's called Stockbridge Affordable Housing. Construct may own it, but it's the town's reputation that is at stake at this situation. Okay?
I agree. I agree. And I think that there should be, at least some back burner possibilities that if Construct can't, fulfill the needs here, that there should be some other options, whether that be Stockbridge Housing taking the property back and maintaining it, and the town taking it. I agree. I think that, that they should really show that they're going to take this seriously and take our needs seriously as tenants. And I'm pushing for that as well. And we're prepared to, we want to cooperate with them, and we hope that they will cooperate with us to get, those needs.
I think we're all in agreement that we need information, so there's no argument there. So we'll look for it. We'll await the material.
Thank you so much. Thank you everyone for your help.
Any other business to come before this committee?
I move we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, everybody. 7:11.